So these past couple of months, Xiaomi has been absolutely slaying down in the budget smartphone realm. Basically, the Redmi Note 9 Pro has been holding down rival mobiles, while the Poco X3 NFC unloads its bowels all over them. But of course, Xiaomi is just as proficient when it comes to the premium smartphone tech too, and the latest proof of that is this beast here, the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro, which costs just €599 and yet serves up a Snapdragon 865 chipset, a 144Hz screen, a 108 megapixel camera, all kinds of clever tech. Now, we don't have an official UK price on release date just yet, but it should be coming to Blighty really shortly. And in preparation, I thought I would whip it on out of the box and take you on a full-on tour of all of the hardware and the software so you know what to expect. And for all the latest greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Right, so let's see what we've got. So you've got a pokey pin to get your SIM into the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro. You've got a USB to 3.5mm headphone adapter, because unfortunately there's no headphone port on the Mi 10T Pro. You've got a two-tone condom case to slap your Mi 10T Pro into if you want a bit of extra protection. You've got the actual smartphone, of course, always a bonus. You've got your 33-watt adapter. This is a 2-pin effort because this is a European review model. And of course, you've got your Type-C USB cable. So that's the box. This is the phone. And oh my god, this is El Jefe right here. What a monster. The Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro is a 6.67-inch smartphone, so it's definitely up there in terms of size, and it weighs 218 grams, and it's certainly, you can feel that weight, shall we say. Seriously, I get the feeling that if you dropped this smartphone, the ground would actually come off worse. And thankfully you do have Gorilla Glass 5 all over the back and the front as well, just in case you do happen to drop the thing, so hopefully it'll survive the test of time. And as you can see there, while a lot of glass smartphones these days are going for the sort of the matte finish, you've got a perfectly mirrored surface here on the back of the Mi 10T Pro. So I guess it's quite handy if you want to make sure you haven't got toothpaste all over your face before you jump on a Zoom call or whatever. And you've got a choice of 3 colours with the Mi 10T Pro as well. You've got Cosmic Black, Lunar Silver or Aurora Blue. So yep, someone's definitely been watching far too much Star Trek. But I've got to say, for something with a mirrored glossy surface on that back end, the Mi 10T Pro doesn't really seem to be picking up greasy prints or marks or anything, which is quite remarkable. Quite happy to see a bit of edge-mounted physical fingerprint sensor action here on the side of this Xiaomi phone rather than one of the in-display sensors. You've got your volume rocker just above that, your USB port, your SIM tray and a speaker grill down below. Of course, no headphone jack, unfortunately. Unfortunately, that camera blob is poking up quite far from the arse end of the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro, so that is going to provide stability issues if you do lie the phone down on a desk. Extreme wobble. So let's check out that SIM tray. And what you have here is dual SIM support on the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro. It's one of those reversible trays, but sadly no room for a micro SD memory card to expand that either 128 or 256 gigs of storage, depending on which model you go for. And that storage is the fresh new UFS 3.1 as well, so nice and nippy, especially when writing data, and also quite energy efficient too. So that should be particularly good news if you're shooting a lot of 108 megapixel photos, not to mention recording a lot of 8K video, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Now, the actual software is Android 10 with Xiaomi's fresh MiUI 12 slathered all on top. And I've got to admit, I was never really a fan of Xiaomi's MiUI launcher until version 12, and all of a sudden you've got great features like that app store, which was sorely missing from previous versions. And as usual, you can drag down that notifications bar from anywhere on the left side of the screen, but if you drag down on the right side of the screen, you pull down that iOS style control center, which I actually really like. You've got immediate fast access to all of your toggles there, so you don't have to do the whole double swipe down of the notifications tab in order to access that stuff. And as usual, of course, it's all fully customizable. And no, MiUI certainly isn't perfect, even in this latest incarnation. For instance, the settings menu is still an ugly mess. It's about as attractive as an elephant's nutsack, frankly. But thankfully, so far here on the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro, I haven't seen a single advert yet, not even when installing new apps, when using some of Xiaomi's own pre-installed apps, of which there are quite a few, unfortunately. But anyway, I won't bang on about MiUI 12 now, because I've done a full separate video all about it, and tips and tricks on the best features and everything, so go check that out for all you need to know. And so far, that 6.67-inch IPS display seems like a good way of taking in a movie on the move. No, it's not an AMOLED panel, unfortunately, like a lot of premium handsets around this sort of price point. However, the good news is that you still get some nice sharp contrast, some fairly deep blacks, and in fact the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro is fully HDR10 certified, so you can stream a good bit of HDR content on supported services. And yes, that does include a good bit of Netflix action. And those colours are respectably punchy as well for an IPS panel. You can actually dive into the display settings and completely customize those as well if you want some more realistic visuals, otherwise you want to give them a bit of pop. Either way, job done. And yeah, yeah, on that maximum brightness, it's not exactly a match for the most powerful OLEDs out there, but you know what, that visibility should be absolutely fine, even when there's strong daylight, which is something I'm consigned to not seeing for quite some time. But as I mentioned before, you can play around with the colors as much as you like. You can dive into advanced settings as well if you want to choose specific gamut options. It's got a bit of sRGB if you want really natural looking visuals. And when you're using those more natural visual settings, you'll find that the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro has a just noticeable color difference, a GNCD figure of 0.39, which means really realistic looking colors. It's not too far behind the OnePlus 8 series. And one of the advantages that the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro has by going with that IPS screen instead of an AMOLED is the fact that you can get up to a 144Hz refresh rate without absolutely breaking the bank. And as you can see in the settings, it is actually set to 144Hz by default, but you can drop it all the way back down to the standard 90 or go for a nice piggy in the middle at 90Hz as well. And quite often you don't get a middle ground with a lot of these smartphones, so it's good to see that option. So that's the visuals, but what about the audio? Well, it's a stereo speaker setup here on the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro. So you got your bottom mounted speaker and then the earpiece doubles as a media speaker as well. Let's just jack up that volume.
Want the latest greatest tech, please do pop subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers. Whee.
So it's a little bit echoey on that top of volume. Decent volume for sure, certainly powerful enough to sort of easily make everything heard. But yeah, certainly in terms of the actual audio quality, not fantastic. That top speaker certainly isn't pulling the same amount of weight as the bottom speaker, so it's not quite a stereo speaker output. And it is a shame that you don't get a 3.5mm headphone jack on this bad boy as well, but hopefully the Bluetooth smarts will be all good. Have to stay tuned for my full review for that one. And of course, quite a lot of £500 to £600 smartphones we've seen recently, like the Nokia 8.3 5G and the Pixel 5, are happy to run Qualcomm Snapdragon 765G chipset rather than the Billy Big Bollocks 865. And to be fair, the 765G will do everything you want it to. You know, it'll play games like Call of Duty, PubG, on that top detail levels, no worries. But if you demand the absolute best of the best performance, then Xiaomi has you covered, because this thing's got the Snapdragon 865 stuffed inside, backed by 8 gigs of DDR5 RAM, so it'll do anything you chuck its way. This thing is faster than Usain Bolt with a firecracker rammed up his arse. And Xiaomi hasn't skimped when it comes to the 5G chops either. You've got that X55 modem slapped in here as well, so you've got full 5G support. So of course I'll be testing out the gaming chops on the Mi 10T Pro for my full review. And of course, on top of the great performance and everything, you've also got the Game Turbo feature as well, which just allows you to basically block notifications, fine-tune that performance. You've got all kinds of settings you can play around with there. But again, I fully covered Game Turbo in my MiUI 12 deep dive, so go check that out for all you need to know. And stuffed away inside that enormous chassis is a 5000 milliamp battery as well, so hopefully that should keep you going all day long. Hopefully you won't need to touch that battery saver mode, let alone the ultra battery saver mode. And you've got some perfectly respectable 33 watt fast charging on there as well, although no wireless charging support. And let's finish up with a quick squint at the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro's rear camera tech, and it may look like a quint lens setup here. It's actually only a triple lens setup. So as usual, Xiaomi's camera app is absolutely stuffed to the gills and beyond with all kinds of different toggles and features. That primary sensor is a 108 megapixel Samsung HMX effort. Of course, you don't get a 108 megapixel image by default. I think the standard is 16 megapixel resolution photos, which is still more than enough detail. But if you do, for whatever reason, want to shoot a photo that you can then blow up onto the side of a skyscraper, you've got that 108 megapixel mode. And of course, one of the other benefits of a 108 megapixel photo is the fact that you can crop right in without really losing much in the way of detail, so it'll still look sharp when blown up onto a monitor or a TV or whatever. So you basically don't even need a telephoto lens. And that's probably just as well, because you don't have one. You can get a bit of 2x digital zoom on the go. Otherwise, the secondary lens on here is a 13 megapixel ultra wide angle effort, so as you can see there, fits plenty into frame. And touch wood, flipping to that ultra wide angle lens doesn't seem to affect the picture quality at all. It looks like the color temperature and everything still remains the same, still quite accurate looking colors there. And as for that final lens in the triple lens setup, well, it is a 5 megapixel macro lens, but honestly, who really cares about that, because macro lenses suck. And you've got the usual selection of bonus camera modes. So for instance, good old portrait mode to keep your subject in focus while blurring out everything in the background with a bokeh style effect. You've got your Pro mode if you want to get some manual controls on the go. As you can see there, you can play around with the ISO levels, the shutter speeds, the focus, and once again capture photos at the full 108 megapixel resolution. You've got a bugger ton of other bonus modes which you can play around if you want, the likes of the long exposure mode and the fresh new clone tool as well. And as you can see there, this does exactly what you would expect it to. Basically just keep the camera still, have a person jump around or do something silly, and then lots of different versions of them will appear. Hurrah. And if you want to shoot a good bit of video action, well, as you can see, you can jump all the way up to 8K resolution with this bad boy, and you can shoot 6 minutes of footage as well. That's that UFS 3.1 coming into play, and that's available at either 24 or 30 frames per second, so videos of your kid picking their nose and eating it will never have looked so good. Alternatively, if you want something a bit more regular, shall we say, then you can just shoot up to standard 4K resolution, either at 30 or 60 FPS. And then last up, if we swap back to photo and swap to that front-facing selfie camera, well, it is a 20 megapixel effort. Now you've got the usual HDR smarts, which is great if you're trying to shoot against a bright background or whatever. You've got a portrait mode once again, and as always, that is ripe for the bin. So that right there is a whistle-stop tour of the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro. Definitely still a bit of a clunky name, but I'll tell you what, if you want premium specs and features for a price that won't absolutely cripple your savings, then it might be the way to go. You've got your 108 megapixel camera with 8K video recording smarts. You've got your Snapdragon 865 chipset, UFS 3.1, a 144Hz display, a massive 5000 mAh battery, and the fresh new MiUI 12, which I actually rather like. And sure, there are some caveats. You don't have a headphone jack, the stereo speaker setup isn't exactly fantastic, you don't have any OLED display tech, which I know puts a lot of people off. But if you're willing to make those sacrifices to pay a little bit less, then definitely give the Mi 10T Pro a chance. I'm going to be hopefully giving you a full review of this once everything stops being so freaking crazy and 12 smartphones stop landing on my doorstep every day. Until then, really hope this has been helpful. It'd be great to hear your own thoughts on the Mi 10T Pro down below. And please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech. Cheers everyone. Love you.